Yeah, hello. Welcome back to my weekly update, which hasn't been weekly recently because I was very busy with classes. And then the Ukraine war started. I had to look how to rebalance my investments. And of course, the war of Russia against Ukraine, I think we all agree on that. The West is pretty unified, but of course, the questions are more interesting. How to decide um, what is the truth? I mean, for us, it seems very clear, right? But I know a lot of people who are convinced that the West is at least equally responsible for that, which seems very absurd to us. But I always think we should go to a more skeptical position. And you learn that when you try to invest your money and try to make more money, right? It's not that easy. And the stock market has a humbling effect on people who always know what is right. So therefore, I want to look a little bit on investing today, and I find this video here of Andrei Jikh very interesting, how to invest like the 1%. And of course, usually we say, well, just buy ETFs. And again, I'm not a financial advisor or something. Do your own research, like when you go to the doctor, right? Don't trust me. I don't have a degree on that. But what Andrei Jikh is saying is very interesting. He talks about a secret technique, maybe secret, that wealthy people used over centuries in order to preserve their wealth. And let's listen to it for a second. What did I do here? Oh, I was in the wrong program. Here we go.
And I want to share that technique with you now so you can think like the rich. Because the idea is very simple. The premise goes something like this: buy, borrow, die. So let's talk about the
So this is the technique, buy, borrow, die. At first you have an accumulation phase. That's pretty clear. So you take your money, you put it into, let's say, an ETF, a passive investment strategy, or you buy a house, even though a house is not the best asset, as usually investors know. And especially now that we have a stock market crash, it is a very good opportunity to go into the market. And let's say you just buy an ETF or an S&P 500, depending on the time you jump into the market. People in the past usually made 9% for MSCI World, for example, 7%. That's an expectable margin. And then you look at the inflation rate, which is 2%. That's a pretty good return. With 7%, you basically can double your money every 7 to 10 years, which will have a tremendous effect because of the compound interest rate. But it will take a very long time when you just have a little money. But then there's another technique. So once you have accumulated some wealth, let's say you have bought a house, you can do something very intelligent and you can have an asset-backed loan. That means you borrow against your house. And this loan will be much cheaper. Normally you pay 10%, 10 to 12%, and then obviously when you just get 7% returns plus maybe 2% inflation, that makes 9%, so you're 1% in loss. But if you borrow against your house, and you can do that infinitely, then you get a loan of about 2%. And so now you see, okay, 2%, inflation is usually 2%. Now we hit like 7% inflation. So you're already on a zero there. And then if you have a good investment strategy in the long run, I mean, there are some problems that he will explain in this video, right? But if you have a good investment strategy, you just make 7% profit out of nothing. So you just earn 7%. And then the other thing is, of course, you will never pay taxes. So it's also a tax optimized strategy because you never sell your stocks anymore. So you don't have to pay any kind of capital gains tax or income tax because you don't make money. You just take up loans. And when you have to pay back the loan, you have already made a profit, but you just take up another loan on top of that, pay the loan back, and the new loan you also invest. And of course, you get something for you to eat and so on. But you go on with that infinitely and you never sell your stocks. And then what you do in the end, and that's the last step, you just die. Why do you die? Because you give these stocks to your children, and probably they also have to take your debt. I mean, I don't know entirely how it is, but they go on with the same technique. Nevertheless, at that point, they could also just sell the stocks, pay back all the loans, and they didn't have to pay taxes because the moment they get the stocks is where they are considered as income. And they have the value in the not in terms of at what value you bought them, but they have to pay taxes on the value that it was when they received them. So this is a tax evasion scheme. You can say that's moral or immoral, that's okay. But this is how the rich stay rich. And if you don't play the game plays you. That's the cynical truth of our time. So interestingly enough, TechLead refers to this video and says also, this is the best moment to do that.
So you know those stories about how extremely rich people are able to not pay taxes. Well, I dug into this and I figured it out. They take loans out instead, and loans are not taxable. You can take out a loan, spend that loan money, and you essentially deposit investment collateral. So you can use your house, your stock positions as collateral for the loan that you take out. And over time, the eroding value of the US dollar essentially wipes out these loans. You essentially never repay back the loans, but you do have to pay interest on it over time to maintain that position. And so the key...
So you can also watch this video. Sorry, I just had to sneeze. You can also watch this video. And then the other interesting thing, Andrei Jikh
I finally did
it.
I can't believe it. This is terrifying, but I finally got myself into debt, which is a place I never thought I'd be because I've always been so afraid to borrow money my whole life. I never want to feel like I owe someone money, but here we are. This is not clickbait. I actually did borrow a small loan of $1 million from my father. No, I'm kidding. My parents are not rich.
So he didn't borrow that from his money, but he applied exactly that technique. So I will also link this video. You can watch it too. Now, what am I doing? I'm still invested in science, and I found this other channel here from, what is his name? Simon Clark. And he made a challenge for himself to read the top 100 scientific papers.
As a challenge, I decided to read the top 100 scientific papers of all time. But what does that actually mean, the top scientific papers? Well, one definition is looking at the citations on those papers.
So this is very interesting because it is about the papers that were cited in the top 100. And I don't think it's so useful as it sounds like. So this is an interesting video where you probably afterwards decide, okay, I don't have to read the top 100 papers because basically they just explain techniques. And they invent, like most of these authors invented new techniques that were then used by everyone, but they didn't have groundbreaking theories or something. Nevertheless, Simon Clark, it's an interesting channel. He also talks about how he got his PhD in math, how he got into sciences. And he also wants to achieve more science literacy in the people, which I find an interesting term and which I technically also do. So I have also a new channel next to my many channels that I already have. And I call that assisted reading. So, and this is different from my other channels because my other channels are boring. And this channel is even more boring, yeah, because I will just read a paper. And I just read here a paper of David Lewis on causation. And this is a very influential article that is kind of groundbreaking in the techniques of applied modal logic. So I'm also studying modal logic, but the thing is, okay, this is a channel for assisted readings where we'll really have a deep dive and read every little detail of a text, even text that I don't know. And I will have, of course, some problems because new theories demand a lot of attention. And you can join me, help me deciphering these papers, or you can also say, let's read this paper. And then I will read these papers and we can have comments. I hope that that develops into something and builds a community for myself that I can maintain until old age and then have fun reading papers together with people and also joining the journey of achieving more scientific literacy. Next to that, I'm also, of course, interested in art. You know, I still live in China, so I won't talk in very much ideological detail about this. But this here is an interesting picture. And you may just see a picture, right, of a beautiful lady, an Instagram shot from the 18th century or something, 17th century, I don't know. It's made by an art professor from one of the major art universities in China, the best one in Shandong. I just looked at it and I thought, yeah, a bit too much idealization to me. It's idolizing the common man, the working man, which may be fine, the working woman here in this case, of course. And it's tough and rough work. And she basically looks content and is super happy. Because that's the real life, right? Real life is the worker. It's about the worker. So now you also understand why I maybe see a bit too much beautification in this picture. I think she wouldn't look that content, right? And that happy. If she is doing anything here, then she's dreaming about how she gets out of this situation. Okay, so art is an interesting subject. I also found another interesting video, Marcel Duchamp talking about his art. Really a recommendation.
In the Philadelphia Museum of Art is a collection of paintings and objects by a man whose unique view of life has greatly influenced modern art.
So here you are, Marcel, looking at your big glass.
Yes. And the more I look at it, the more I like it.
Okay, so why is this great? Because it's great to see how Marcel Duchamp, a great conceptual artist, works. I also made a series with a friend now where we talk about art. He's an artist himself and an art professor at Shandong University. And he says, okay, it's not like art is not about being a camera anymore. It's now diving into something intuitive, conceptual. And that's always what also my position is in philosophy. I think art precedes philosophy, much like Adorno. And philosophy has to go where art has already opened the terrain. So this was my update today. I hope you enjoyed it. You can, of course, look into my blog. You can look into my other channels. I will link everything in the description. Listen to my podcast and so on. And I hope you enjoyed this update. If you enjoyed it, then leave a comment, give it a like, subscribe. And other than that, I can just say live long and do more modal logic, do more art, maybe modal logic art, and prosper.